All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. Really pleased to be joined by my next guest. He's an NFL analyst over at Football Gameplan and CBS Sports. It's Emory Hunt. Emory, thanks for joining the show, man. Good time to talk. It's been a decade.
I appreciate you having me on, man. It's good to be back.
Absolutely. Emory Hunt, for my listeners, was actually my first podcast interview ever when I did a little YouTube show back in the day. So it's awesome to see how far he's come along. And Emory, it's an interesting year for the Philadelphia Eagles and also for the entire NFC East. You cover the New York Giants as well. I feel like, am I wrong to say that for the first time in maybe a long time, all four teams are going to be at least competent and maybe multiple NFC East teams make the playoffs?
Well, the latter part I feel like is true. Multiple NFC East teams made the playoffs. Talk about Dallas and Philly. I feel like the Giants and Washington still have a ways to go. Washington is closer than the Giants. Giants still have a big question at quarterback, and that could hinder team success. But the Eagles and Cowboys should once again get to the playoffs. I think they're a clear cut the two best teams in the NFC East.
Absolutely. Is there a favorite for you right now? Do you think it's still Dallas, or is Philadelphia close the gap? Because I feel like even though last year both teams made the playoffs, there was still a pretty significant gap between the two.
To me, it's the gap is closing between both teams, and if Philly can split with Dallas, I feel like they'll win the East. If they get swept, then I feel like Dallas obviously will take the division. But that's how close they are. I can trust Dallas's defensive pieces more because I've seen it before.
Sure.
Philly has added a ton new pieces on defense, good pieces, but you still have to see it play out first. You can predict that it's going to be better, and they can't get much worse than what they were last year. So they'll definitely be better. But how much better is going to be the key, and that's really the biggest difference. We're talking about a game difference between them and Dallas. I do feel like both teams will win over 10 games. It's going to be coming down to whether or not they can split with the Cowboys, and that'll determine who will win the division.
No, it's a great point. And I think, Emory, a lot of this comes down to, both rosters very strong. And I think it's the same with even Washington. I like their roster, but a lot of the question marks come down to the quarterback position. Jalen Hurts heading into a massive year 3. This Eagles team has done everything to surround him with loads of talent on both sides of the ball. But they have 2 first-round picks next year and what a lot of people think is a strong quarterback class. So it's a huge year. What do you think is coming for Hurts this year? Do you imagine a big year 3 Josh Allen-like step or subtle improvements? What are your expectations for number 1 in Philly?
2 things. Hurts is already their franchise quarterback, in my opinion, and he has the one thing that people tend to try to search for when they're trying to scout quarterbacks, the quote-unquote it factor. He has heart. He has a dog in him that people like to say. He has what you want at the position and what you need to succeed. So everything else is cosmetic. So they showed that last year they even showed that as a rookie with him going in there and beating the Saints that were on a roll, that he competed in the game that he was thrown in against Green Bay. Right. You look at last year, him going to the playoffs and winning those games. And again, this is someone that has seen it, done it, bought the t-shirt. I like how people always bring up Alabama and him getting benched, but they don't bring up the fact that he got back in the game, they needed him to win. He got them into the championship, got them into the playoffs. And they always love to forget his Oklahoma year, as if he didn't throw for over 3,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 8 picks, 1,200 yards rushing, and 20 rushing touchdowns. If it wasn't for Joe Burrow doing what Joe Burrow did that year, Hurts would have been your Heisman Trophy winner. So to me, Philly has their guy. Those 2 first-round picks shall go, in my opinion, to continue to bolster the defense or continue to add depth and talent along the offensive line. And no quarterback that's coming out next year has what Hurts already has and has shown. It's all projection. Hurts has that in spades. They have their quarterback of the future and their franchise guy in Hurts. And you can tell by the way they have built around him and follow his leadership both on and off the field.
No, Emory, it's a really good point, and I even brought it up earlier on the show because, of course, the joint practices with the Eagles and Dolphins, people are talking about that Hurts-Tua dynamic, but I think that is huge, right, to have in a franchise quarterback is, I don't know, what would be the word, emotional stamina, or just especially in Philadelphia, it's a tough place to play quarterback, and with all the pressure, he's gone through it in college, so wouldn't you say that's kind of a key component in a franchise quarterback?
Can you handle pressure? And we've seen him handle it at the biggest stage as a freshman, got national championship with Alabama with him as the starting quarterback. He helped lead the team toward the national championship. Tua obviously won it his second season. And then he goes and gets Oklahoma into the playoffs, and they win a game. Get them to the playoffs where they have to win the Big 12 championship game. So, yes, he's battle tested. And I said this when he got drafted. I'm pretty sure the tweets are out there. Philly has their guy that's perfect for the city. Because think about the
Point.
issues that people had with Carson Wentz and him not being able to block out all the noise. Hurts, you can't tell if you're up 20 or down 20. He is still even killed.
It's
He
true.
can hear boos, he can hear cheers, and he blocks all that out and just continues to play. And that showed last year, even when they had their struggles. And to me, and just to be completely clear, their struggles early on in the season wasn't with Hurts throwing the football. It was the fact that Nick Sirianni would not call run plays to where the fans were screaming, just run the ball. And that helped them, kind of balance out their offense because early on, Hurts was completing passes. He was throwing touchdowns. A lot of them got called back. It was a weird phenomenon last year for the Eagles earlier in the season. So now you add what I expect to go into 2021 or 2022, a more balanced offense, better receiving options to go along with what they do running the football, and also with an improved defense because people forget Hurts had these guys up with a lead against the Chargers, and that defense, with what,
Yep.
2 minutes left in the game, gave
Mhm.
Herbert. They let them walk down the field and get the game-winning point. So it's not like Hurts is devoid of passing talent. That's just a myth that's thrown out there. This dude can ball, and the Eagles have the right mindset for the position, for the city. That's why I tweeted out back when he was drafted. Philly will love this dude, and it's shown so far in his early career.
I think fans will be really excited to hear that for sure. And then, Emory, moving over to running back, I wanted to get your thoughts about this Eagles backfield heading into 2022. Obviously, this team ran more than any team in the NFL last year. The second half of the year, it turned things around. They went 7-2 down the stretch because of it to make the playoffs. What camp do you find yourself in when it comes to Miles Sanders, though? Because I think a lot of Eagles fans all in on how good this offensive line is when it comes to run blocking, how mobile Jalen Hurts is. I think they like what they're getting in Kenneth Gainwell in year two. But Miles Sanders, despite maybe his efficiency over the last 3 years, hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's in a contract year, and it feels like the Eagles fan base is split on him, what to do with him long term. Where do you stand on Miles Sanders?
It's fascinating because you brought up a great point of him not being healthy, and
Yeah.
that's the biggest key. And
Mhm.
so, for that reason, you look at Kenneth Gainwell, and I tweeted this out after or during the game against the Browns that he has the most uh, natural feel for the run game. I think he is the better back out of the group that they have.
Huh.
So, in order to preserve a Miles Sanders, I would have him play cleanup. Have him come in complimenting a Gainwell and let Gainwell set the table, and then let Sanders come in and be that splash player because that's what he has done because he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he also has put the ball on the ground. So you want to see someone like Gainwell that just got a natural feel for it, helps keeps your run game on pace, and for someone like Sanders to come in and be that screen guy, to be that sprint draw guy, to be that splash player to help capitalize off a tired defense, and he still brings the same level of burst and elusiveness. But I feel like Gainwell and to some degree Scott,
Yeah.
Boston Scott is a more natural runner,
Mhm.
consistently down to down than Miles Sanders. So I like the depth that they have. I like Miles Sanders as an individual player, but he has to stay healthy. He has to protect the football. But I feel like if they rearrange the chairs a little bit, they'll get better seating at the table.
Emory, you mentioned too how maybe Gainwell should be the lead guy and kind of have this 1-2 split where Sanders, because of the injuries, can't really be a quote unquote workhorse running back. I know in the NFL now there really aren't many of those guys, but the guy that gets the majority of the carries. What about them on the field at the same time? The Eagles don't have Zach Ertz anymore. I feel like their 12 personnel package is going to be a little bit weaker and less multiple this year. Could 21 personnel at all help replace that lack of a dangerous 12 package? Where could Gainwell and Sanders be used on the field at the same time? Like, what's an advantage for an NFL offense in the modern day to use maybe two running backs?
I'm always a fan of that because
Yeah.
I go back. I'm a little bit older than you, so I go back to the days where the Raiders had Bo and Marcus Allen on the field at the
Mhm.
same time. So imagine a backfield where you have Bo Jackson, Marcus Allen, Tim Brown out there, wide receiver, Ty Richardson at tight end. How do you stop that? The Eagles potentially could have that because it's tough for running backs. I mean, for linebackers to cover backs, but also don't
Right.
sleep on the depth that they have at tight end. I know Tyree Jackson is working himself back from injury, but you have Togiai out there that's a really solid player. So they have some options. They may feel comfortable with some of these options, but to your point in question, it's always an advantage that you have two backs out there because again, the good part about it, they can also what they have shown, they're probably willing to block for each other, so you can run to both sides of the
Yep.
field. So it doesn't matter who's getting the football, both guys are really in locked into to really blocking for one another. You saw this a lot with Notre Dame back in the 90s when you had a Jerome Bettis and Ricky Waters on the field at the same time, and so on and so forth. So it can happen if you got the talent, use it. Reggie Bush, Deuce McAllister, Pierre Thomas, and Ingram, and so you can do it. And the Eagles have the depth and the talent to do it. Plus, they have the benefit of having a mobile quarterback, which always
Right.
aids the run game.
Absolutely. Emory, my last question for you, I want to flip over to college football real quick. And it doesn't have to do with the Eagles replacing Jalen Hurts. I know some of my listeners won't believe me when I say that, but is there a dark horse quarterback prospect or maybe somebody that a lot of people aren't giving the national spotlight to that I should be watching this year? Like, I don't know, maybe another Malik Willis from Liberty. Is there maybe a dark horse candidate this year that we should be keeping an eye on for the quarterback class next year?
Well, I feel like he's from a Power Five school, and no one is talking about him now, but they will as the season goes on. Is
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson from Florida? He's
Mhm.
tremendous, and even the flashes we saw last season was enough to say, hey man, if this dude was the full-time starter and he's now paired with a really great coach and quarterback developer and Billy Napier who played the position, he gets himself a supercharged version of Levi Lewis, who was excellent for the Raging Cajuns. Anthony Richardson to me is going to be that guy that's going to skyrocket 6'4", 245, 4.4 speed, can put the ball anywhere he wants to on the field at all levels, and has a level of that Jalen Hurts in him to where he can forget about a bad play and keep it level headed. You saw this against LSU through a horrible pick in the first quarter of that game, and then came back and was on fire. Even the last interception that ended the game, it was a right read, right throw. He just got hit as he threw it, so the ball hung up in
Mhm.
the air. Otherwise, it would have been a touchdown, and they
Right.
would have beaten LSU. So Richardson, to me, and right now I've said this before, he's the guy that I would take number one because of the upside, the height, weight, speed, the physical nature of his game, and the potential growth that he still has left within his game over a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud.
Emory Hunt, a football game plan and CBS Sports, joining me. Emory, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. And hopefully we'll do it sooner than 10 years this time.
Well, listen, man, it shows you, and you are a living testament to your listeners that if you stay in that water long enough, you'll hit land eventually, and you're doing great things. And people
Appreciate
don't
that.
realize it takes time to
Yeah.
grow a brand, and you've done that. And I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you, and I wish you the best moving forward.
Same to you, Emory. Thanks so much for coming on, man.